Next, I'd like to invite Neil Hicks. Neil is a longtime human rights activist who's worked on human rights issues in Egypt for several decades. He now is the Senior Director for Advocacy with the Cairo Institute for Human Rights Studies. Cairo Institute for Human Rights Studies is one of the oldest and most important independent human rights organizations that's indigenous to the Arab world. And Mohammed's very proud to have worked with the Cairo Institute in many ways for many years. So.
An independent human rights organization with a regional focus that was forced to move its main office away from Egypt in 2014 when President Sisi assumed power. That was because of a level of persecution and threat from the state against the organization that made it impossible for us to carry out the work we have been doing since 1993. The leaders of the Cairo Institute became subjects of criminal investigation under Case 173 of 2011, the so-called foreign funding case, a wide-ranging prosecution that has suffocated the human rights movement in Egypt. My colleagues were faced with death threats, personal asset freezes, and the assets of the organization were also threatened. The director of our Cairo office today, he's been under a travel ban since May 2016, and he faces criminal charges that could result in his imprisonment for life. And yet he and his colleagues in Cairo continue to work. And our colleagues in the Egyptian human rights movement, as Mortez mentioned, they have faced worse. Activists have been targeted for enforced disappearance, and some are serving long prison terms on trumped-up charges after unfair trials. A government that takes such severe measures against peaceful activists who promote universal values and the rule of law must have something to hide. And in Sisi's case, it is a shameful record of brutality, intolerance, and repression, unprecedented in Egypt's modern history. By welcoming President Sisi to the White House today, President Trump is giving America's blessing to a government that has killed thousands of its political opponents, imprisoned tens of thousands, practiced extrajudicial killing and enforced disappearances in the manner of Latin American dictatorships of an earlier era. And it has mounted a sustained assault on Egypt's institutions, its judiciary, the media, its legislature, and its electoral processes. The proposed constitutional amendments are only a further blow against the already weakened checks on Sisi's absolute power. And Sisi's visit today illuminates a disturbing global trend. By uncritically embracing autocrats and dictators, the Trump administration is giving leaders like President Sisi a free pass to increase their repression and further their own interests. As others have described, Sisi is taking advantage of America's failure to stand for justice, human rights, and freedom to make himself effectively president for life, to undermine judicial independence, and to increase the already oversized powers of the Egyptian military. And whose interest does this serve? Not the Egyptian people, and not the United States government, which should have learned by now that alliances with Middle Eastern dictators rarely work out well. While the administration is abdicating its responsibilities to speak out for human values, it is incumbent on Congress to fill the void. It is therefore very welcome to see the members of Congress here today and members from both parties expressing concerns about human rights violations in Sisi's Egypt. We urge them to use their voices and their powers to let the Egyptian people know that the United States has not abandoned them in their struggle for dignity, rights, and freedom, and to put the Sisi regime on notice that its persistent disregard for basic human rights will have consequences in those areas, such as military assistance, where Congress wields influence. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Neil.